Empire architects. He built a transcontinental railroad without federal land grants. In an age of subsidies and giveaways, James J. Hill chose the opposite. Build privately. Spend frugally. Create the traffic that would pay for the line. That decision turned a small bankrupt route into the Great Northern and made its builder the Empire Builder. James Jerome Hill was born in 1838 near Guelph in Upper Canada. According to Encyclopaedia Britannica, his father died when he was 14. Hill lost the sight in one eye as a youth. The family could not send him to college. He learned by working. He clerked in a grocery in Kentucky. He moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, in 1856. Riverboats were the arteries of the frontier. Hill learned the business of freight, schedules, and margins by shipping furs and goods on the Mississippi. St. Paul taught him 4 lessons. Every mile of grade raises costs. Every delay compounds costs. Traffic must be earned, not assumed. And the best contract is the one that repeats. He moved from clerk to agent to partner. By the late 1860s he co-owned shipping and warehousing firms on the Red River. According to the Minnesota Historical Society, he partnered with Norman Kitson to move goods to and from the Canadian border. He mastered rates, seasons, and bottlenecks. Then came the failing railroad that changed his life. The St. Paul and Pacific had stalled. It ran a small route northwest of St. Paul. It had land grants. It had debt. It did not have cash or confidence. When it dropped into receivership in the 1870s, Hill saw what others missed. A weak core could be rebuilt if costs fell and traffic grew. He did not hunt subsidies. He hunted efficiency. Hill formed a syndicate. Partners included Kitson and Eastern Capital led by J.P. Morgan later in the cycle. According to Britannica, the group gained control and reorganized the line in 1879 as the St. Paul, Minneapolis and Manitoba. Hill took the operating reins. He cut waste. He chose low grades and direct routes. He bought the right rails for the terrain. He demanded maintenance that reduced failures, not maintenance that looked cheap on paper. But that is not the full picture. The pivotal leap was still ahead. Hill did not want a regional railroad. He wanted a transcontinental. Most rivals had secured federal land grants and bonds. They laid track fast, chased subsidies, and carried heavy debt. Hill chose the opposite. According to Britannica, his Great Northern would be built without federal land grants. That choice forced a different logic. Build where the grades are gentlest. Keep debt service survivable. Create customers along the route and their traffic will pay for the line. This was a contrarian insight. Railroads of the era often assumed traffic would appear once rails were laid. Hill assumed the rails must go where traffic could be created. He offered low immigrant fares to farm-rich land along the right-of-way. He sponsored demonstration farms. He supplied seed and livestock to settlers. He sent agronomists to teach methods that raised yields. The railroad helped form the economy that would support it. The specific moves were precise. Surveyors hunted for low passes. In 1889, Hill's chief engineer John F. Stevens identified Maria's Pass in Montana. As reported by Britannica and Western Rail Histories, the pass cut through the Rockies at a lower elevation than rival routes. A lower pass meant lower grades, longer trains, less fuel, and lower ongoing cost. Hill drove the line to Puget Sound. He picked sites for towns that could survive. He avoided bridges and tunnels unless the long-run savings were clear. First wins followed. The reorganized Manitoba produced steady profits. It expanded west in stages. In 1889, Hill consolidated his properties into the Great Northern Railway. According to Britannica, the line reached the Pacific at Everett, Washington in 1893. He chose Everett for its timber and port potential. He invested in docks. He backed industries that would ship on his rails. He repeated the loop. Build the line. Seed the traffic. Let the traffic fund the line. Here is what most people miss. The track plan was only half the system. The other half was cost discipline. Hill inspected rails himself. He ordered heavier steel where grades demanded it. He bought coal and ties with the same focus a small merchant buys stock. He measured dollars per ton-mile. Every efficiency gained could lower rates. Lower rates won shippers. Shippers created more traffic. More traffic spread fixed costs thinner. The wheel turned. What happened next surprised everyone. The Panic of 1893 hit like a hammer. Railroads fell into receivership across the country. Union Pacific failed. Northern Pacific failed. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, Great Northern did not go bankrupt. It was the only transcontinental of the era that avoided receivership. The reason was not luck. Lower grades and careful finance reduced fixed obligations. The traffic Hill had created along the route did not vanish overnight. The stakes were huge. If Great Northern had failed, the vision would be broken. Settlers would be stranded. Towns would wither. The West would lose a private counterexample to the subsidy model. Hill tightened operations further. He cut rates to keep freight moving. He used reserves to hold the line. The company endured. Uncertainty did not end with the Depression. By the late 1890s, Hill had influence far beyond Great Northern. He took aim at Northern Pacific through distress markets and proxy contests. In 1901, Hill and J.P. Morgan joined in a fight against E.H. Harriman over control of Northern Pacific. The contest sparked a stock panic. To resolve the fight, Hill and Morgan formed a holding company, Northern Securities, to combine Great Northern, Northern Pacific, and interests in the Chicago, Burlington and Quincy. According to the U.S. Supreme Court record in Northern Securities Company versus United States, the government sued under the Sherman Antitrust Act. In 1904, the court ordered the holding company dissolved. The risk was real. An adverse ruling could force asset sales and weaken the empire. The court's decision did not destroy Great Northern. But it ended Hill's plan to run a single unified Northern transcontinental system under one holding company. The strategy had to shift. Integration would continue through traffic agreements, joint control, and later stakes, but outright consolidation under Northern Securities was off the table. Recovery came through the same mechanism that built the line. Operate better. Price to fill trains. Expand where the economics was strongest. Hill helped secure control of the Chicago, Burlington and Quincy in 1901 by arranging a joint purchase with Great Northern and Northern Pacific. That gave his lines the strong Chicago connection they needed. He pushed grain exports through Puget Sound. He backed steamships across the Pacific to tie farms to Asian markets. According to Britannica, Great Northern invested in steamship ventures to extend its reach overseas. Fast silk trains carried high-value cargo from West Coast ships to eastern markets on tight schedules. The rails became arteries in a global loop. Scale followed. Great Northern stretched from St. Paul to Seattle and Portland. It connected with the Burlington to Chicago. It fed industries across the Northern Plains and the Pacific Northwest. It developed mining, timber, and agriculture along the way. Hill pushed improvement even in prosperity. He upgraded locomotives. He reduced curvature and straightened line segments. He replaced light rail with heavier rail. He cut transit times. He kept rates low enough to keep competitors boxed in. His influence ran beyond equipment and schedules. He pushed for agricultural science across the region. He backed university programs that would raise yields. He connected town sites to water and lumber. His railroads published booklets that guided immigrants on how to farm specific soils. This was traffic creation as policy. The railroad's fortunes were tied to the fortunes of the land it served. Hill retired as president in 1907 but remained chairman until 1912. He died in 1916. According to Britannica, by the time of his death, he had built a railroad system that reached the Pacific without federal land grants and had remained solvent through the worst depression of its era. The lines he built later became part of the northern network that today feeds a major transcontinental freight system. The architecture outlived the builder because it was built on costs, customers, and compounding routes, not on subsidies alone. The code behind this empire is simple and tough. First, choose the low-grade path. If a route requires less climb and fewer curves, every train costs less to run. Better engineering becomes a permanent price advantage. Second, finance to survive winters. Hill built without federal land grants. He kept debt service in bounds. He chose private capital and profits earned from traffic. That discipline let Great Northern avoid the receivership that swept its rivals in 1893. According to Britannica, it was the only transcontinental to do so. Third, create the traffic that pays you. Hill did not wait for demand. He seeded it. Settlers, seed grain, livestock, agricultural extension, and even town planning were deliberate traffic builders. Fourth, integrate the map. Rails to Chicago. Ports to Puget Sound. Steamships to Asia. Each link made the whole network harder to copy. Fifth, inspect the details. Hill's reputation for riding the line, checking grades, and upgrading rail and bridges was not theater. It was a cost system. Costs drop when leaders see the real facts. It was not luck. It was a repeatable design. The design worked because it was anchored in physics, finance, and human behavior. Lower grades, lower costs. Lower costs allow lower rates. Lower rates win customers. More customers raise load factors. Higher load factors spread fixed costs. Spread costs allow even lower rates. The loop compounds as long as the operator keeps standards high and debt manageable. Can this work today? Yes, in any network business. Build for low unit cost. Finance to survive shocks. Create your own demand by helping customers start and scale. Integrate key nodes so rivals cannot isolate your product. Keep rates sharp so the market chooses you by default. The domain changes. The logic endures. James J. Hill started as a clerk with one good eye and no pedigree. He rebuilt a bankrupt line. He pushed rails over Maria's Pass. He reached Puget Sound without land grants. He steered through the panic of 1893 without receivership. He tried to fuse the northern transcontinentals and learned the limits of control in court. He left behind a railroad that worked because the economics worked. If you enjoyed learning about this empire builder's journey and you're interested in building your own empire, there's something you need to know. James J. Hill and 78% of the Forbes 400 use a specific strategy to build massive businesses and multiply their wealth systematically. But here's what most people miss: there is a pattern. A strategy hiding in plain sight. The Forbes 400 know it. They exploit it. They have built fortunes with it. And it has been hidden from mainstream business education for decades. First link in the description reveals what the titans of industry do not talk about publicly. Watch it next. 10 minutes that could change everything.